After crushing the Ionian revolt, the Persian king Darius decided to punish the cities of Athens and Eritrea for supporting the rebels. In 490 BCE, he sent a frightening force across the Aegean led by the Persian commanders Datis and Artaphernes. With them traveled the exiled Athenian tyrant Hippias. Hippias wished to return and rule once more, having promised to make Athens a satrap for the great king. Having a foothold in southern Greece would also serve Darius as a stepping point to conquer the rest of the Hellenic peoples. Upon learning of the incoming Persian wave, the Athenians decided to recruit every man of the polis. Be it a free citizen or a slave, everyone would pick up a spear and a shield against the incoming threat. As far as they knew, the Persian Empire was the biggest of any era and was virtually unstoppable. Athens had just gotten its democracy, and the prospect of living again under the rule of Hippias the tyrant and other nobles was even more unsettling. In August of 490 BCE, both armies were now on the plain of Marathon in Attica, ready to test each other. The Athenians had sent a runner to ask the Spartans for help. The answer was that aid will arrive after the end of the religious festival of Carnea, which was a week away. Until then, the Spartan army was forbidden to march out of Laconia. The Athenians numbered 9,000 men, with 1,000 more coming from the nearby city of Plataea. Their strategy was eloquently simple: to pin the Persians without engaging them until the Spartans arrive. This would exhaust the invaders, as their large force of over 80,000 men needed supplies of food and water daily. The actual fighting force numbered around 26,000 and included infantry, archers, and cavalry. Since the Greeks occupied the higher part of the plain of Marathon, the Persians were reluctant to start an uphill charge. In their minds, they didn't have to. Hippias had convinced their commanders that some factions in the city of Athens were ready to betray the defenders. This had happened in other cities, where people simply submitted upon seeing the might of the army. 10 Greek generals, called strategoi, led the Athenians. They took turns at being in command, with a different general taking the reins each day. Among them, Miltiades, one of the most famous Athenians of all time. Having fought the Persians before, he was the one who convinced his fellow citizens to march to Marathon, instead of leaving Attica for the enemy to ravage and then freely lay siege on Athens. Miltiades put his faith in the Athenian hoplite, one of the strongest units of ancient warfare. Each individual soldier was armed with a big bronze shield and a spear that was longer and stronger than the Persian weaponry. All wore a frightening helmet and a bronze cuirass in the shape of a muscular torso. The curved surface meant to deflect heavy blows and arrows. On the 11th day since their arrival, the Persians came up with a brilliant move. They would put some infantry and most of the cavalry on their ships and go around Attica to directly attack Athens. Since only old men, women, and children were left trembling within the walls, the polis would be helpless. The rest, around 15,000 soldiers, would keep the hoplites in check and ready to attack if they turned back and marched for Athens. Now it was the Greeks under pressure to act. Miltiades was again in command of the army. He would gamble everything to save Athens. In a bold move, it was decided that the hoplites would directly attack the Persian front. Since they had fewer men, Miltiades weakened the center with a line only 3 men deep. One of these units would be under the command of another famous Athenian, Themistocles. Miltiades then put the bulk of the force on the flanks. Now at least his army could not be surrounded. Slowly, the Greeks started to cross the plain of Marathon. No battle cries or songs were heard. Every soldier was saving his breath, for they knew that once they were within the range of the enemy arrows, they would have to run full speed at the enemy. The Persians, seeing the advancing Greeks, must have thought the Athenians mad to attack without cavalry or archers. A hail of black arrows quickly engulfed the sky. At this point, the hoplites charged their enemy with the full ferocity of men fighting for their lands. The bowmen moved behind their own line and were ineffective for the rest of the battle. General Datis had put his best units in the center and his weakest soldiers on the flanks. If the Persians could break through the middle and surround their enemy, the Greeks would be put in extreme peril. Just as the Athenian center was about to break, the decisive battle on both flanks was won by the Greeks. They routed the Persians and proceeded to push through the center. Now the best of the Persian warriors found themselves crushed on both sides by inspired hoplites. Finally, the Persian army routed. Some were killed in pursuit, while others manned their ships and escaped. They immediately set course for Athens, joining the rest of the fleet. The battle was won, but the city was still in danger. There was no time for celebration. Miltiades sent forward a messenger to bring the word to Athens. Do not give up the city. We have won. Phidippides, the man who ran to Sparta and fought at Marathon, now made his final mission: to inform his fellow citizens of the victory. It is said that he died after delivering the news. The rest of the army had a meal and marched back to their beloved polis. They had to cross roughly 26 miles across Attica, while the Persian ships sailed the long way along the coast. Coming around the last bend of the bay into Phaleron, they were expecting an empty beach. Instead, they gazed upon the Athenian army, left foot in the breakers, shields and spears up, with the sun gleaming off their shields, blinding the Persians as they came. With no way to land on that beach, the invaders now turned back and sailed away. Athenian democracy could have been strangled that day, but it endured and prevailed. These men fought not only for their lands and their people, but for the right to be the masters of their own destiny and speech.